Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime, and now it is 2025. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you're all off to a good start. Hope you all hit the gym today, drinking lots of water, not biting your nails anymore, whatever it is. So I hope you guys are following through on those New Year's resolutions. One thing that doesn't seem to change from year to year is the Dan Markel long and windy road to justice. It's been going on for over 10 years now. And you all know that Donna Adelson's trial was continued. It's set now for June 3rd, but there's been kind of a flurry of information coming out as it pertains to Charlie Adelson. And we are going to dig into that right now with our esteemed panel, the famed Tallahassee criminal defense attorney, the letter R, Timothy Jansen. He is obviously a criminal defense attorney in Tallahassee and a former federal prosecutor. Going clockwise here, we've got the professor and just the professor, Jo Potuto, the law professor. She is a professor emerita at the University of Nebraska. Has been there since 1974 and is a legal scholar. At least I just made her one. And last but certainly not least, Martin Radner, otherwise known as Brother Counsel, a criminal defense attorney with a very nice Shure microphone there in his quaint little office in freezing Detroit, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. And of course, he is known for his YouTube channel, Brother Counsel, which is a great name. The COE is telling Shure to sponsor us. That'd be a great thing. They should sponsor us. Martin, I'm sitting in Florida, where it is going to hit, believe it or not, the 40s and or 50s tomorrow. Is it colder in the suburbs of Detroit right now?
It is really, really cold. But don't worry. With this panel, it's going to feel warm everywhere. So, but I did want to tell you, Joel, that, a lot has been happening with the holidays. I'm sure a lot of your guests have been reaching out, trying to figure out what to get you for the holidays. So I've had some of my viewers and subscribers reaching out to me, like, what can they do for Brother Counsel? And I told them the answer is quite simple. I mean, there's one book that really is the best gift. And that's what I've been telling you. Just get me that book. And, there's not enough copies that you can buy.
Martin, have I not sent you a free copy for pushing this as hard as you have?
By the way, I haven't. I definitely did not get a signed copy. That's for sure.
Okay. Well, I will get you a signed copy, and I appreciate that. It's funny. I've asked my community for $150 million, and it hasn't happened. So, but I'm glad that you're, that you're more modest. So there you go. All right. Well, brother, I'm going to start with you because you actually are the man who broke this news on Friday. Turns out that this motion, this appellate motion, was denied. Just take us a half step back and bring people kind of up to speed of where we are and then what happened Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened was that we know that there was an appeal that was filed on behalf of Charlie Adelson. That appeal was sitting in the appellate court. And then all hell broke loose in the Donna Adelson case. And Charlie Adelson was added to the witness list. And then his appellate attorneys filed motions that he's not going to testify. He's going to rescind any waiver if there was a waiver. And we all know what happened from then on in. Well, after that hearing where Judge Everett said, okay, Rashbaum, you're off the case. Alex Morris, you're off the case. We're going to start this, hit the reset button and start this again. No contact with these attorneys, with any new attorneys, because of the conflict of interest that Dan Rashbaum had. That seemed to have caused the appellate attorneys that were representing Charlie Adelson for their wheels to start turning. And they said, wait a minute. If there's a conflict of interest here, maybe this conflict of interest actually existed back when Charlie Adelson was being charged, and back when his trial was occurring. And if Dan Rashbaum had a conflict of interest, because at the same time he was representing Donna Adelson, and he made strategic decisions which could adversely affect his representation of Charlie Adelson, well, then that itself is a basis for a mistrial. But the problem is that you can't just bounce around whatever court you want. Right now, the appellate courts had jurisdiction. So there's kind of at a procedurally, what they had to do was they had to file this motion in the appellate court saying, hey, let's put everything on pause. Let's relinquish your jurisdiction, meaning you'll allow the case to go back to the trial level. And then we'll fight this out at the trial level. And we'll file this motion. Well, maybe you'll have an evidentiary hearing. Dan Rashbaum will take the stand, and we'll figure out whether it was an actual conflict of interest that Dan Rashbaum had at the time when he was representing Charlie Adelson, which could then require a new trial for Charlie Adelson. Well, the Court of Appeals definitely has the discretion. There's no rule, there's no case law in Florida that says that when these circumstances happen, then the court is required to send it back. This was completely discretionary amongst the Court of Appeals. And what they decided to do, which what had just happened on Friday, they decided that they're not going to relinquish jurisdiction. They're not going to send it back down to the trial level. And what's going to happen now is that the case is going to stay in the Court of Appeals, run its track in the Court of Appeals, and then, they can see what they're going to do with this specific conflict of interest issue in either the Court of Appeals, or after the appeals are exhausted, you can then file another motion at the trial court level saying that the whole trial was improper and there should be a mistrial. So really, the question is going to be, number one, are they going to try to bring this issue up on appeal because it was not preserved? And there's some case law about that if you want me to get into that. And then secondly, even if they forego arguing this as a point of the Court of Appeals in the part of the appeal, well, then they'll be able to still bring it up after the appeals are exhausted. So this may be a couple of years. Well, we'll hear about Charlie Adelson's motion in the trial court after this is all done. So I hope that I kind of summed it up for you. And
you did.
There's more to talk about, but that's kind of like the quick summary.
By the way, it is best guest, as you see behind me, but a better community. And I know you guys have lots of questions, as do I. So triple Q's, and I'll scroll to the bottom. But there was another motion filed today. We're going to get to that in a minute. But Tim Jansen, and then obviously we will get to the legal scholar, Professor Potuto, in a moment. But Tim, when you heard this news, what was your initial reaction? Surprising, not surprising? I mean, it's obviously very high profile in Tallahassee case everybody's talking about. It looked for a while because of the whole, Rashbaum debacle, that momentum was favoring Charlie. And then boom, you find out that his motion was denied.
Well, everybody, when they buy a lottery ticket, believes they're going to win until the numbers come out, right? So they were buying a lottery ticket, and a lot of hoopla. You're spending that money before the winnings even announced. It's not surprising. Very rarely does the appellate court relinquish jurisdiction on a case like this at this time. It is a high-profile case. Courts like to have a clean record when they get up there so they can resolve everything one time. But I don't think there was enough in the record for them to relinquish jurisdiction. I think they just didn't want to do it. There is another motion pending before the court, and that only goes to counts 2 and 3. It's trying to clean up the guideline range. And the case law is, if you don't fix that prior to the appeal, the brief filed, you waived it. So that's not going to give a new trial, the latest motion. But obviously, Mr. Uppman is filing every motion he needs to file on behalf of Charlie. He's properly preserving everything he can to protect his rights. And we'll see. But I wasn't surprised. When I talked to Mike, he said he's had it done, but it's kind of rare. But he's had success with getting a new them to relinquish jurisdiction.
Yeah. Professor Potuto, with all due respect to Michael Offerman, who I'd love to have on the show, and I'm sure is a great guy, seems like his job is incredibly, boring, uninteresting? Like you've got Tim Jansen, Martin Radner. Tim is a showman. Tim gets up there in court, speaking to the jurors. He puts on his defense voice. He's got it going on. This guy Ufferman kind of lives in the shadows and is basically pushing paper for a very high price, which is not a bad deal. I would like to do that myself, but he's just filing these appeals kind of one after the other. In all seriousness, I mean, he's said to be one of the best in the state of Florida. What is this skill, in your opinion, involved here? Because, right now it just seems, and obviously I'm not an attorney, but it just seems like he's filing what has to be filed. So eventually this actually can be appealed.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a boring job. You have to really know the law, and you have to be very good at being able to comb through a transcript and find where the errors might be. And you can't do that unless you really know the law. And then you have to know how to put an argument together. You've got to make decisions tactically about what things might be appealable, but they're not. They'll just detract from the main argument. You got to make judgments about, where to put your money in terms of what the best argument is. And they do get a chance to shine because they make the appellate argument in front of an appellate court or the Supreme Court of the state. And in fact, to some extent, that job not only lets you shine, but it's easier because when you've got witnesses, I think they're ticking time bombs. You never know when they're going to erupt in a way that you didn't expect. But in an appellate argument, it's all yours. You have to be, in the appellate argument, the oral argument, you have to be quick on your feet because you can't anticipate all the questions that might be asked. You might get a question that's off the wall that doesn't really relate to anything, and you still have to be able to handle it on the fly. You've got to be, just as trial lawyers need to be relatable to a jury, an appellate lawyer has to be relatable to the appellate court. So I think it's an interesting job. It's not a job for everybody because you are, poring over documents and reading documents. It's not as interactive, but I think for the right personality, it's a really interesting job, and it's certainly an important job.
Yeah, Tim, I just want to bounce back to you on that. You're the sexy criminal defense attorney. Ufferman.
I do.
I mean, would you say that he does know? And I'm obviously not taking a shot at you, but would you say that he does know the law better because he has to know the intricacies of the law to come up and appeal whatever he can appeal? Like the law is a living, breathing thing. It's ever changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm intrigued by Ufferman. Like, what is his day like? He just sits in front of a computer and he's like, let me find something in the law that they screwed up and then let me appeal this. And he goes on about his day.
So Mike's really smart. He loves to read. He's a good writer.
There you go. That's why I would never have that job.
He knows the law better than I would because he's up to date every day. I'm out there representing clients, deciding whether my guy should give a statement, what's the value, who the witnesses are we going to take a plea? Mike is every day looking at appellate court decisions, reading facts to see how they fit in a scenario. I often call Mike when I'm in the middle of a trial and say, hey, this is my issue. What do you think? And as Mike says, when your trial lawyer is in district court, he's in two courtrooms. He's in that courtroom and the appellate court. And if you don't reserve or preserve the objection, you waived it. So it doesn't matter how smart Mike is, and he knows a good way to win it. You didn't preserve it. You've screwed it up. And I rely on Mike. I think he's one of the best. I always refer appeals to Mike. He's not cheap, but you don't get the cheapest lawyer, right? I don't recommend that, obviously.
How does that work? I mean, how does this work with Charlie Adelson? I don't think anybody really knows like the inside baseball. So he's got to hire an appellate attorney. They have money. He goes and he hires the best, Marquel Ufferman. Is it a flat fee? Is it on a retainer? How does he pay this guy?
We never discuss fees, but I know he's had flat fee cases because with some of my clients, I know he quoted a flat fee. I think he probably does hourly too. But I don't know that. He doesn't disclose that, and I don't disclose my fees to Mike. But he's great. I mean, he's a wonderful person, a very kind, giving person. And he does do trial court work. He does 3.850s, but he doesn't do them in Leon County. He won't do them here because he gets a lot of referrals from here. So he does those out of this jurisdiction. So he does do some hearings, trial hearings in the district court, not just appellate.
And I don't want to get you in trouble, but did you invite him to the Jansen Christmas party, which is the biggest party in Tallahassee? I'm definitely coming next year, by the way.
He is always invited to my parties. He's been in the past, but a lot of people travel during the holidays. So if they don't come, I understand. I don't kick them off the list, but I think about it. But
Yeah.
Well, considering all the times I've been in a panel with Tim, I thought I would get an invitation this year. But
next year, 2025 is the year.
We're all coming in 2025. We're going to be there. Brother counsel, this one from Jean Philpot. That's how I will pronounce it. I heard there was big news about Robert Adelson testifying and what he would say. Did the panel see this? Brother, I know you had some inside scoop on the in-camera hearing being unsealed. What specifically, which in-camera hearing was that? What did we learn?
Yeah, so that was another thing that we just put out on the channel. That's why all your guests got to be subscribers.
Brother Counsel, subscribe to Brother Counsel.
Because we just broke this also. There was this transcript for this. This was based on a motion that was filed regarding Robert Adelson testifying. Robert Adelson was listed on the witness list. Obviously, the defense does not want Robert Adelson to testify. So Dan Rashbaum, at the time, this was a few months ago, this is in September, he filed this motion under seal, which means that we can't see it. He filed the motion, but we kind of got the gist of it, that he doesn't want Robert Adelson, to preclude Robert Adelson from testifying in the trial. So what Judge Everett did in that hearing was in September sometime, is that he said we're going to have an in-camera hearing, meaning that the public can't see what's going on. Well, that transcript just got released. I went through the entire transcript on my channel, trying to explain as much as I could what was going on there. Basically, this was one of the main issues of the motion, is whether Robert Adelson will be able to testify. And if he's going to be able to testify, what about? So obviously he's a strange.
Did they give any specifics, like any guidelines here?
Yeah. So he's the question really is going. The reason why the prosecution wants Robert Adelson to testify is in case the defense is going to try to argue that Donna Adelson is this sweet, innocent grandmother, very gullible, and just got swept by this crazy story that Charlie Adelson told her. And she's just this innocent, sweet grandmother who just got swept into this, had no idea about anything that was going on. Now, Robert Adelson would testify that his mother, Donna Adelson, is nothing of the sort of gullible. She's very on top of it, very on the ball. And that's kind of to rebut that type of argument. So this was what was going on during that in-camera hearing. And I go through all this on the channel, on my channel, that we go through the entire transcript, but that was the gist of it. And the question is, what exactly is he going to be allowed to say? Is the state going to be able to call Robert Adelson in their case in chief, or is it only in rebuttal to the defense? This was all discussed in the hearing, and it seemed to me that Judge Everett is going to allow Robert Adelson to testify if the defense makes an issue or makes an argument that she's just a gullible grandmother. So the defense really again, even though there's new attorneys now, that ruling's still that his thoughts are still going to stay the same in it, most likely. So they have to be very careful with their defense. If they're going to try to argue this gullible grandmother, then Robert Adelson may be able to testify. So that's what came out there. There were some other issues also were discussed, especially with Charlie Adelson's attorney, as we know that name was Marcus. His first attorney on the case,
David Marcus. Yeah.
David Marcus.
Yeah, David
Marcus was initially on the case, and exactly what happened when he heard that Katie McManaway got arrested. There was some evidence that he right away called Charlie Adelson. Where exactly was he when he called Charlie Adelson? So those were also issues that were brought up in that in-camera hearing. Again, I go through all this in the channel, but yeah, these go back into the question of Robert Adelson. It may be a very real possibility that he'll testify, and that would be very interesting, to see him testify.
Yeah. Joe,
if I can add a couple of things to that. There also is a discussion of admissions that Donna made to Robert.
Yeah.
and there were 7 that they didn't, you don't know what they were, but there were 7 that were the focus of the discussion. And at least Rashbaum did not object to the introduction of the admissions. He may have a particular objection to the context or the tenor of a particular admission. There was also an interesting colloquy on a racist statement that somebody made. That motion came from the state saying they wanted to keep it out, which suggests that it's not something Donna said, because I can't imagine that the state would care if a statement she made was looked at disfavorably or unfavorably by the jury. So the question is what the statement could be, but they all agreed it shouldn't come in. And I played with it a little and had some ideas about what they were talking about there. But since on this show, I have been vocal about complaining about how I think Daniel Rashbaum has done his job. On this motion, I thought he did a pretty good job. He came in and he said there are 3 different areas we need to talk about where we've got, issues, and they were able to do it very efficiently. Just go through it 1, 2, 3. And I think that was at least in large part due to the way he framed the issues and brought them to the attention of the judge.
Finally, a little bit of love for Rashbaum, who no one's heard from as far as I know since this. Hey, Joel and the crew, we need Joel, I guess, with Vinny Politan, investigators. We're actually, I'm going to be on there tonight. I don't know if you have ESPN, as Steve Cohen would say, but Vinny asked me to come on. And I think, Tim, you're on tomorrow night, right?
I am on the Shiver case.
Oh, there you go. So there you go. Best guests, and we'll be on Court TV, one after the other. So, Tim, I mean, both the professor and brother counsel bring up interesting points. So, I mean, Robert Adelson could really be like a nuclear bomb here and would just blow up the defense. I mean, I don't know how to ask this question. When would Georgia need to know what their defense is going to be in order to be able to call a Robert Adelson? I mean, how does this all play out in real time is, I guess, what I'm asking.
Well, she'll have him under subpoena, and she'll wait and see what happens in the opening. She'll see how the trial goes. She will immediately at any time go to sidebar and say, Judge, I think the defense has opened the door that we want to revisit, and we expect to call Robert Adelson as in rebuttal. I'm just giving the court's notice, and we'd like a ruling, Judge, because he's traveling. Or they might have him come here and make sure he's here. Every trial is fluid, right? Defense has witnesses, prosecution has witnesses that they have subpoenaed, but they may or may not call them. You might have a wonderful witnesses and the state's case goes down. The last thing you want to do is give them an opportunity to fix it, get through, move on. If you think you have enough to win, you're done. Georgia's going to wait to the last minute. She doesn't have to do anything sooner and decide who she's going to call. And I've seen her do that in a case I had with her. She got smart and she released a witness who would have been great for us. And she cleverly released him. And she caught us. So
yeah, that's why she was just named ADA of the year, I think. Jared Ross and his family, the wife has both the looks and the brains. No offense, Jared. My wife has gone up against Mr. Offerman several times. Jared's wife does appellate work in cases and speaks very highly of him. Tim Jansen, in all seriousness, you're going to have to ask Mr. Offerman to come on with you one night. We'll just talk about the appellate process. I know he's not going to be able to talk about the case, but now that I called his job boring, he probably won't come on.
I think he will. I think he'd come on and not talk specifics.
Okay, just don't tell him what I said about his job tonight.
No, I won't.
Okay, thank you. Interesting question. Jo Potuto, this is for you. Then we'll get back into the details. By the way, tomorrow I'm back in court in Miami Federal Court, 1:30 p.m. There's a hearing for Orrin Alexander. Not sure why the media really is not picking up on this story. These are 3 of 4 brothers who have all been accused of some of the most heinous Diddy-like sex crimes against women, and alone was denied basically bond on Friday. I was there for it. And tomorrow, the lawyer for Orrin Alexander, the twin brother, he had an eye issue. So they couldn't, the lawyer asked for a bit of a delay. So the hearing is going to be tomorrow. But I had a chance to speak to a guy named Howard Shrebnick, who's representing the other twin, Alone Alexander. And on camera, if you go and watch Friday's show, unequivocally, I asked him, because there's at least 40 accusers who have come forward, and he said every single one of them is lying. Tim Jansen.
Yep.
Kind of a crazy statement to make. Just you're a guy that has to face the media. This is a very savvy. He's Roy Black's co-counsel here in Miami.
Very
Howard
experienced.
Shrebnick,
Yeah.
very experienced. Why would he come out on camera and say that every single accuser is lying? Why not just say my clients are innocent? Because now he's kind of started a seismic shift, at least here in Miami, where people are not happy with him.
Well, you have to understand, he's dealing with a couple different things. One, he's probably got a client requiring him to be very aggressive in his defense. He's probably getting paid very aggressive fee to be aggressive. And Pete Diddy's lawyer did the same thing, right? And he went for bond like 4 times, right? You are kind of jumping off a bridge when you say that, though. It's one thing to say my client is innocent, but when you come out and say these people are liars, what happened to Trump when he said that girl was a liar? He got sued for like $450 million, right?
Yeah.
So you always have to be careful as the lawyer when you're making statements that are not in the courthouse, they're outside the courthouse, and you call someone a liar. These people are not public figures. They're victims, actually. So I'd be careful calling somebody a liar.
Yeah.
There's different ways to say someone's a liar, right? There's nice ways, there's clever ways, but just to come out and say you're a liar, well, you better have evidence to prove that.
What's your, and brother counsel, you're out there as well. So what's your take on this? I know we're off the rails a little bit, but it wouldn't be 2025. I'm getting there, COE. I'm getting there. By the way, that's going to be our new second channel, STS True Crime Talk. Tim Jansen's going to be a part of it. Who knows? Maybe the professor will have a show, and brother's already got his show, but maybe he'll do something periodically with us. But brother, this is a case of 3 of 4 brothers who, again, are accused of some of the most hideous, heinous acts. It's an open secret here in Miami. I just saw someone tonight who knows them. It was like we were, kind of been waiting for this day. But their lawyer literally, and not only did he say all the accusers are lying, there was a follow-up question then after I asked that from another reporter, and he doubled down and he said every single one, meaning every single one is lying. Is he treading in like kind of on dangerous water there by making such a, I guess, sweeping allegation against the accusers?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously rules of professional responsibility when it comes to talking to the media. You always got to be very careful about it. I'm sure he knows them. I'm sure he's, from the looks of it, he's not. This is not his first rodeo. I will say that was interesting. What Alex Spiro did when he's representing Jay-Z, right? So that's one instance, at least at this point, and it happened something like was it 20 years ago or something? Or is it 12 years ago? Is it 12 or 20? I forgot the details, but a long time ago. And it's one person. And Alex Spiro went and did a press conference, and he laid out exactly why he is saying that this person is completely fabricating all the details. And he laid it out very, very, very explicitly, showing you step by step how everything that she's saying in the complaint could not have happened and did not happen. So when you're that clear on the evidence, it's much more you can get the public maybe to accept that a little bit more than just a blanket statement. Yeah, they're all lying. And it's when it's 40 people and not one person, and you're just saying they're completely lying, then like Tim was saying, it's a broad statement, and it's a large statement, and it's the power in the numbers, so maybe he could have been a little bit more politically correct with that comment, but I can understand why he wants to really push back very strongly and vigorously defend his client and say that his client is as clean as the fallen snow here in Detroit.
Yeah. And he, he's Roy Black is arguably the best criminal defense attorney in the country. That's what many say. That's his partner. He's been around, but I was just surprised to hear him malign all the accusers. I thought there was a better way for him to go about it. Maybe I'll have a follow-up question for him tomorrow if he's back in court. I don't know if he's going to be there. It's going to be the other attorney named Clue. And let's get back on topic. The COE here, always keeping me. So let's do this. We've got this is the First District Court of Appeal. This is the work that the COE does. So she wants it seen. This is the actual filing here. And then we'll go to this, Jo Potuto, the professor. So you see the docket was filed. This item motion was filed today, 1/6/2025. Description, notice of pending motion, correct sentencing error. So Jo Potuto, Tim Jansen came to us with this, saying that he spoke to some other attorneys, and basically within the Charlie Adelson world now, that Ufferman is calling into question some of the maybe the sentencing guidelines. What is this all about, and how like detail and minutia oriented does this get?
Well, it depends on what the sentencing guidelines are like. I really don't have a good answer to this. On the murder one, the only penalty, the sentence in Florida, as I understand it, is life without parole. So I don't know what the technical error could have been there. On the other counts, there might be something that wasn't done correctly. But I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about Florida law to even be able to hazard a guess about what it should be. But if it's technical errors, they're correctable. It doesn't require a new trial. It doesn't require anything like that. You just have to get the error corrected so that the record is clean.
Yeah.
So Joe, so what they're asking here is they're saying if count one is thrown out, they're cleansing counts 2 and 3.
Okay.
Just in case count one ultimately gets thrown out, because if they don't do it now, they've waived it in the future. And
count one is obviously first degree, right?
First degree murder.
Right.
I see.
Right.
That makes sense.
So then, Tim, the second point here, you need a 473-inch TV to read this, but luckily my eyes have not failed me yet. Point number 2, the defendant submits that there are errors on the criminal punishment code sentencing score sheet here and after score sheet that was utilized to sentence the defendant for counts 2 and 3. Martin Radner, pick up the baton right there. What the hell are they saying here?
Yeah, I mean, like in most, again, I'm not intimately familiar with Florida's jurisdiction, but in most jurisdictions, when you're sentenced, so there's a pre-sentence investigation report, and there's certain score sheets, for lack of a better term, and of how they score you as a defendant. Are you a repeat offender? Are how many crimes you committed? What type of community service? All these different things. You get a certain score, and then according to that score, then you're placed in a certain bracket, and that bracket is going to represent where your sentencing guidelines should be. So if there's an error in that for whatever reason, they scored you. Everything's assigned points. So if your points are just off, and therefore you were put in the wrong bracket, and therefore the guidelines were off, and that could have affected the sentence. So that's what you got to correct. That's what I imagine what's going on here. And again, I haven't seen this yet. This document, I've been trying. I saw it on the docket, but I couldn't pull it up for some reason. Only the amazing attorney Tim Jansen was able to get this. But the rest of us,
you got to have special Tallahassee powers.
I've spoken to Mike's brilliant associate, Laurel, and it would require them to bring him back and have a resentencing on counts 2 and 3. Now, this may become moot if he gets appellate court, affirms the conviction on count 1, but then they have the post-conviction relief of ineffective counsel because of conflict. This case will not be gone for another 5 years, in my opinion.
Yep.
What is this? Victim injury points. It says up top there are 2 errors on the score sheet pursuant to Florida rule of criminal procedure. However, the score sheet in the second paragraph in the instant case incorrectly scored 120 victim injury death points.
Right.
Victim injury resulting from one or more capital offenses before the court for sentencing must not be included upon any score sheet prepared for non-capital offenses also pending before the court for sentencing. This does not prohibit the scoring of victim injury as a result of non-capital offense or offenses before the court for sentence. Now, if I was Michael Offerman and I was reading this at 3:30 in the afternoon, my face would plant on my desk immediately. Martin, what does this mean?
Yeah, like I was saying, it sounds like there's a points problem there, how they're scoring these points. And again, I can't read it so clearly from my screen, but it sounds like there's they just scored him wrong. These are the points that you don't want. By the way, normally you want to get points.
You don't want victim injury.
Yeah,
And remember this: Rashbaum didn't put any case on it sentencing. So if he gets a new sentencing, his new lawyers can put a whole new sentencing program before the court, and it may ultimately change the sentencing counts 2 and 3.
So Tim, just
and again, I don't think he objected. I don't remember what happened between what happened with the with these scoring points. A lot of times attorneys, by the way, and Tim will tell you this also,
right,
attorneys don't look at the pre-sentencing investigation. They'll just say, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. And they don't look at it carefully, and that can really affect.
I've seen that.
So I mean, Martin, just take us inside baseball a little bit more. So like the scoring system, how does that work? And what I mean, I know you don't know specifically what they're talking about here, but like what could have gone awry, I guess.
Well, exactly the point. I mean, the question is, how serious the crime is, what type of background you have, and all the kind of the points I went over before. You're assigned points for each thing. And there's these graphs, and then there's these charts, and you got to open them up, and you got to make sure that your client, a lot of people don't do this, like Tim was saying. You got to make sure that they actually, according to this system, assign the right amount of points to your client. Victim injury points. How bad was the murder? It's just there's just different points that they assign it. So if they do that wrong,
you have to be able to add and subtract. And a lot of us go to law school because math is not our first subject.
Well, here we go. In fact, to the extent the record suggests any effect the erroneous score sheet had on the sentence, the record suggests that the court did rely on the erroneous score sheet because when requesting that the court impose the maximum sentences, consecutive 30-year sentences on counts 2 and 3, which the court ultimately did, the state referenced the erroneous score sheet. Ms. Kappelman, in regards to count 2 and 3, Your Honor, we are seeking the maximum sentence. We are asking for consecutive 30-year sentences on both of those. I have prepared a score sheet in reference to those. May I approach? Tim Jansen, what is happening here?
Well, you got a really brilliant, smart guy using the record to make his point, which is what Mike does very well. When you have a transcript and you have wording that is indicative of what the law says you can't do, it's very persuasive.
And Tim, how does this actually play out? Like, so what are the next steps? Now, who looks at this? Who decides, okay, we're moving forward, not moving forward? This is not important. It is important. It's immaterial. It's not, how does this move forward?
I think he's preserved the record for the appeal. The appellate court may relinquish jurisdiction on sentencing issues so they get that fixed prior to coming to him. If they don't, he's already preserved it by filing it with both the district court and the appellate court. So if they don't do anything, they can't come back later and say, well, you didn't preserve it. Well, he did. He filed notice and he requested that the sentencing court go back and fix it. So he's done what he has to do. He's let the state know that they're going to fight every little motion. And Mike's good. I mean, and there were mistakes made, right? We know there were mistakes made. My gosh, and there was mistakes made in Donna's trial and it hadn't even started yet. So people always make mistakes, and this is a complex case, and the whole conflict should have never happened. You can't represent one person, then someone else gets arrested, go represent that person, and when that person gets convicted, go back and represent the first. You cannot do that. It's just bad lawyering.
And everybody was talking about it, Tim. I mean, you and I are probably talking about it on the show. Everyone was saying, like, whether you get around this conflict one way or the other, it's still not a good idea. And even the conflict issues to get around wasn't so simple either. And look what happened, So everyone had this niggling feeling. All these lawyers were looking at this case. Everyone had this feeling in the back of my mind, like, so this is not going to end well. This is just, and look what happened.
Here's some more details of the COE, putting up graphic after graphic now. At the bottom of the score sheet, a court has the option to sentence a defendant to state prison, and a court can choose between life or a term of years. In the instant case, the state prison box is left blank, but more importantly, the court checked the box life. As explained above, pursuant to rule, blah, 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 capital felonies are not scored on score sheets, meaning that the score sheet in the instant case was used solely to impose the sentences for counts 2 and 3. The maximum sentences for counts 2 and 3 was 30 years imprisonment for each count, or a total of 60 years. The court ultimately imposed a sentence of 30 years imprisonment for each count, with the sentences to be served consecutively. Therefore, the bottom of the score sheet should have stated that they imposed 60 years, not life. Jo Potuto, this is your world. This is like, you give this as a quiz to your students and they hate you for it. But how important is this?
Well, getting the thing right is always very important, because it's only because it creates an appealable issue, perhaps another hearing to get the sentencing right, more money, more time, more everything. So sure. And some of this, I mean, a lot of jurisdictions and the feds have used sentencing guidelines for a long time. You're counting up, you're counting down. It's not something that anybody likes to do. So it is the thing that gets, short shrift some of the time. And this will make this case itself will provide so many good learning examples for trial ad courses, for crim pro courses, for lawyer ethics courses in law school. I suspect that at least part of this will be on state bar, programs in years to come. This is the case that keeps on giving in terms of legal education. And what's sad and also, I think, educational about it is the things that are going wrong here are not rocket science. They're pretty elemental things about conflict of issues. Tim just wonderfully described it in a nutshell, the description of what Daniel Rashbaum did. The fact that you're not counting right, the fact that you checked the wrong box. I'm sure that the Judge Everett knew that you can't sentence for life on the conspiracy, on the other charge. It's a question of just, not thinking and checking the wrong box. We all do it. But it's, and if you look at it, I'm sure when you look at that and you say you check life, but 30 years and 30 years is 60 years, it's effectively, life. But the fact that it wasn't done correctly means you're going to have to go back and do it again. I have a book on appellate advocacy, and I talk about some of this. You have to be careful. We all know it is impossible to be careful all the time, every day, with everything. There are a lot of things going on. You rely on the lawyers, you rely on the pre-sentence report. They're doing these things all the time. You rely on them to get it right. And, they have erasers on pencils, because we don't always.
Yeah. Joe, is that your book? Did you say that's your book? Your book?
I have a book on appellate advocacy, because
I'm going to buy that on Amazon.
No, you can't buy it on Amazon. I don't think.
Hey, Joe, sometimes prosecutors mess up the score sheets, and we don't give them the eraser.
Yeah, right. Well, I can't imagine a defense lawyer giving a prosecutor an eraser ever if you could avoid it, right?
Tim, what about this here from Brittany? He got the same, meaning Charlie got the same sentence as Catherine Magbanowa for the same charges. So is hers wrong too? She had 0 criminal history. Is there going to be like some kind of domino effect now with this?
Well, she probably waived it because she didn't bring it to the attention of anybody. So that's waived. It's moot. And she can't appeal it.
And by the way, Tim, someone asked much earlier on. I mean, Charlie Adelson comes from money. He's got means. What about Katie McBanawa? Like, if you're indigent or a very, low income person, can you hire? Can you get an appellate attorney?
You get court appointed lawyer. And remember, she is now trying to cut a deal to get her sentence reduced. So that's a really cagey position to be in. You're doing your appeal, but at the same time, you're trying to get a sentence reduction by cooperating. And I anticipate they're going to call her in Donna's trial also.
By the way, real quick,
so many Adelsons involved in this, they can't keep them straight.
If you are appreciating the show, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. And the COE is going to be putting these docs into our Patreon page, so you can find that somewhere. The COE will do that. And by the way, the COE spent a good portion of the holiday rebuilding the merch store that's got some cool things, and we're going to keep it very timely with certain expressions that Best Guess might use. She'll put the link up for that as well. This is a part of the show where I get to, oh, by the way, Samantha has this question. Is STS going to go back to covering the 2 Oklahoma women? Yes. I also want to get back to the sheriff in Kentucky who shot the judge. I'm fascinated by that case. The answer is yes, but the bigger picture here is if you have, we're going out on the road in 2025. As I've said before, we're not here to take part. We're here to take over. That's Conor McGregor's famous line, UFC fighter who's a bit of a dum-dum. But anyway, if you have an idea, you want us to cover a story, you want us to cover a trial, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. We are going to be out on the road quite a bit this year. And by out on the road quite a bit, it means me and my kids yelling at me for missing things. But it'll be worth it, I think, as we build the channel up. So again, send your ideas, survivingthesurvivor@gmail. Probably not the best way to do it, so I'll have to get with the COE to figure out a better way to do that. There's a question up here, brother. I'm going to throw you under the bus. I can't find it, but here it is from my friend Nikki Cuds. Wonder if Rashbaum regrets taking on the whole Adelson gig. How do you think he's feeling now? Seriously, I was kind of thinking about him today in a weird way, wondering like, has life just turned hellish for him? Has he moved on? What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you, it was interesting because I think a lot of people are thinking about this. I'm thinking about this, and I do want to say just before I could jump into that I'm impressed, Joel, that you made it through reading that entire document without your head hitting the desk. So that was you may be closer to Michael Offerman than you believe. But
Martin, I want to know how you made it through law school. I mean, you're just you're next level intellect, so you're just like breezing through it.
Yeah. Well, I went to law school when I had 3 kids already. And it was quite an adventure, law school.
Wow.
I was working at the time. I mean, that's a crazy story for another time, but coming back to your question. Oh yeah, Dan Markel. So,
by the way, I could not make it through law school if I had 3 people to cheat off of, but you had 3 kids. That's a whole different story. That's amazing. Go ahead.
And my wife, when we had another kid while I was in the middle of law school. So that, yeah, there's a lot going on there, but, Dan Rashbaum. So I think that, sometimes when you take this type of case and you know that everyone's going to be dogging on you and you're going to be the defense attorney who's standing up for the Constitution and then his rights and all that, there is a certain enjoyment to doing that and showing that the Constitution is more important than any single case. And I get that 100%. And, you embrace the role and you do your best. And even though people are dogging on you on social media and all that, but then, when you kind of took it just a drop too far and was getting a little bit too, he went on your show, as you know, and he was talking about the defenses of Donna Adelson. And I think it got away from him a little bit. And then all this happens. And then it just really is just egg on your face. And, it's anytime that there's like an ethical issue with any attorney, you hate that stuff. You hate to have to explain yourself. And here it's public. All the lawyers were talking about that he shouldn't have done this, and no one thought it was a good idea, even if you get the waivers. Now the question is, what were there waivers? Were there written waivers? And, if this ultimately turns into a question whether what the state bar is going to do with him, yeah, he's hating that he took that phone call. He's, ever. So at this point, he cannot be feeling comfortable where he is right now with this conflict issue coming up. So yeah, I mean, whatever notoriety he got from it, he's not happy with it right now. I wish he could just, like those people who win the lottery and then wish a few years later that they never won it. No, that not that winning the lottery is the same thing as representing the Adelsons, but you get the point.
I do. Peppermint, this is a great point. I like that you were hanging with the chicken at the courthouse. True story. Downtown Miami, there are wild roosters, aka chickens, I guess. And one was definitely not afraid of me because he was getting up in my face. But COE, if we can get a little tripod for a cell phone, that'd be a step in the right direction in 2025, instead of me with my shaky hands holding it there on a cement slab overlooking the courthouse. It'll be a step for sure in the right direction. Tim Jansen, I just want to go back. So I'm intrigued by the Rob Adelson thing. Yeah, I know you did, but I also I broke it in Orlando when I was chasing James. What's his name? What was the attorney's name? James Owens. Yes, Owens. When I was chasing him around, I broke it. COE. We need another one, please. That's what the Amazon is for. But Tim, back to this Rob Adelson thing. Is there any chance that he could? Thank you, Miss Brazy. This is very kind of you. 2025, 10 memberships. Is there any chance in any world? I mean, he's estranged from the family. We've heard the stories. He, wanted to marry this woman. She was a different faith. Donna went crazy. But is there any chance under the sun? I mean, I guess there is, that he would come out and say, look, my mom is nuts, but she's not a killer. And then that just destroys Georgia. Does Georgia have to be prepared for something like that?
Well, you always have to be prepared when you put a witness on the stand, and even more prepared when you ask a question you don't know the answer. I don't think Georgia's going to put Robert on the stand without fully knowing what he's going to say. And they'll prep him. They got people there. They got lawyers in the background. They'll talk to him and ask him. They'll go over his proposed testimony and make sure it's going to be the same. But, you can't prep somebody for cross-examination. Georgia doesn't know what the question's going to be on cross. Jackie and Zellman are going to probably come in pretty aggressive, and they know the points they want to make. So I think Georgia and Sarah are going to have a little better fight this time. And they got a defendant, who's going to get some sympathy. I think she might come across, certainly she has to come across better than Charlie. You saw her on the undercover bump. Very cool, calm, collective, never lost her cool. And she went on like nothing. And I expect her to do the same thing on the witness stand.
By the way, I did have a chance to speak with Phil Markel over the holidays, and he's doing well. But he's voiced this to me before. He's in his early 80s, and he says, "I want to see justice, meted out before my time." And he's not, he's in good shape, so not worried about him. And I just saw Ruth over the holidays. But same thing. I mean, Joe, what about the whole, slogan, justice delayed is justice denied? I mean, there is a chance here. I mean, there's always a chance that this is going to continue to drag on. And then there's a million people already asking about Wendy with an I. We haven't even gotten there yet. So what about this notion of justice delayed is justice denied?
Well, every phrase like that has some element of truth to it, but you can only go as fast as you can go. And I mean, nobody expected Charlie's trial to potentially blow up because of a conflict issue that happened after the trial. That was that, and the fact that Donna's trial didn't go forward, which slowed it down. Charlie's appeals, you heard Tim say it could be another 5 years. It's going to be another 5 years. For victims, it's just terrific because, you think you get a trial result, it's over, I can go on with my life, and that's frequently not true. But on the other hand, we are looking at the end of the bell curve. It's not true for most trials that they go on for years and years and years and years, and they have this many things, erupt that people don't see that add to the time. But it's true. Justice delayed may not be justice denied, but justice delayed is certainly justice affected
Yeah.
or slowed,
And it's magnified here because of so many different defendants. Was that Martin? Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say something that there was actually in that in-camera hearing, for all of you out there that want to know about it, there was actually specifically...
Go to Brother Counsel on YouTube. Someone said he's brilliant. You better follow Brother Counsel.
There was a specific quote that Robert Adelson said about his mother, specifically that they were talking about in that transcript. Now you can go to my channel and check it out. I don't want to ruin the suspense, but there's a specific statement that they were talking about that they don't want him to say when he's on the stand. So he may not say it on the stand.
Which is
well, it's just Brother Counsel. I mean,
you better, because if you don't, I will.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you then steal my thunder. But I did see a question there that I want to answer, if you don't mind, Joel.
Yeah, go for it.
There's a question of, am I go green or go blue? Right, there we go. Martin, go green or go blue. I'll join your channel depending on your answer. Joke, sort of. So I will tell you that I don't have any deep connection either with Michigan. By the way, go blue or go green represents University of Michigan, and green is Michigan State. In case all you guys, in case you don't know, maybe you do know. I don't know. So I don't have any deep connection to either one. I went to Wayne State, so that's not, that's my law school. I didn't have any really, I know lawyers from both. I think they're both great. But I will say one thing, that I guess if I had to choose one or the other, number one, I like underdogs, and I just feel like Michigan State's more of an underdog. And, just because they're not like this grand old big, University of Michigan top 5 or whatever, I just feel like they're more of an underdog generally. So I would root for the underdog. And then also it happens to be that I took the bar exam in the Breslin Center, which is where Michigan State plays basketball. So, and I passed. So, I do have fond memories, even though it wasn't a great experience taking the bar exam, but I look back at it, okay, I did it. And that's what started me on this path. So I guess I have to tilt a little bit in favor of Michigan State. I
have a follow-up there. You're in the Breslin Center. Are you taking the bar exam on your lap? Are you sitting in one of the 20,000 seats? Or
no, so what they do is the basketball court there is filled with tables. So you're literally on the court. You've got to go down the stands. So you're going all the way from the top, you go all the way down onto the floor. It's the closest you're ever going to get on the floor. And you take the bar exam wherever your seat is, and it's just a brutal experience. But thank God I only have to do it once. So
yeah. How about those Detroit Lions, Martin?
Yeah, I know. You want to hear something crazy? I mean, I know we're getting really off topic here, but there was somebody who put in like this. Apparently, you can bet all these different types of bets. Somebody put a bet in, and you can bet on like the 4 major sports who's going to win, like NHL, NFL, MLB, NBA. Okay, this guy made $100 bet, and he so far was right on the NHL, the MLB, and the NBA. The only one that he has to win now is the NFL, and he gets something like $110,000.
Really?
Okay, he put a bet for $100.
Do we know where he is?
And he betted. This is a year ago. He betted on the Lions winning the Super Bowl. So this guy's $110,000 is riding on whether the Lions can actually win the first Super Bowl in their history.
Well, I'm going to root for that underdog. So whoever he is, I'm rooting for you. You got to know that Wendy is looking over her shoulder, Tim. She can't be comfortable. Lady Justice will serve her cold tea. This comes up every time. This is my good friend, even though we never met, Wesley John Holmes, an Aussie living in Tokyo. There seems to be some momentum lost with Wendy with all the delays. I mean, Tim, is that a real thing? Because I was saying that like it felt like Charlie had momentum, and then I saw Jared Ross say there's no such thing as momentum. He's staying in prison. That's the end of it. Blah blah blah. But what about with Wendy? It's the question. Everyone asks every couple of chats in. People are asking the same question. So what about this? Has momentum been lost in your opinion?
Momentum has nothing to do with it. It's evidence. Evidence that can be admitted into court to prove that she had knowledge and participated in this crime. And apparently Georgia, Jack, and Sarah don't believe they have enough evidence to charge her. Could that change? Yes. But it's what, 11 or 12 years now? They haven't charged her.
Yep. That's a damn long time, but they're also going one at a time. CD Light, thank you so much. This is very kind of you. Super sticker helps us, goes a long way. I can buy a 2-legged tripod now if the COE is willing to order it on the Amazon. Someone yelled at me for ordering on Amazon. I agree with you. We should actually support small businesses, although I don't know a place within 10 miles of me that would sell. Maybe Best Buy, I guess, would have
Best
that,
Buy
but,
has them.
Yeah.
You want Donna's quote?
Yeah, please, Joe.
Yeah. Robert said, she said, well, this is Morris quoting Robert, saying that Donna said, there's no person who places their own interests first more than Donna. That's the quote.
And that's Robert, you said?
That's what they report is Robert having said, and I think there's a better than 50% chance that if Donna's defense is the defense we think it's going to be, that he'll be able to say something like that on the stand.
By the way, this is a fascinating case. Cain Velasquez, for those who do not know, UFC heavyweight champ. I'm a diehard UFC fan, so it's interesting to me. Long story short, his child was being SA'd by an adult, Cain Velasquez, who could kill any human being with his bare hands. He's a heavyweight, trained killer. He decided that he was going to grab his weapon, chase these people down the road, fired at the car, hit the other person. The person did not die, was just injured. The person who was accused of this crime was uninjured completely, but now there's going to be a sentencing in this case. So I'd like to get back and cover that for sure, at least to some extent. So I have a couple more questions, but there was something else that's important. And Jo Potuto, I'm going to go to you on this one. Ruth sent me this. Thank you, Luck of the Irish. Thank you, Luck of the Irish. I like that pick. That pick reminds me of Farrah Fawcett in 1970s. Have I just been canceled? So this is Ruth. Ruth sent this to me, and I hope she's okay with me revealing some of this. But Jared, meaning Jared Ross, who's in our chat, maybe not anymore, but he was at the beginning, just let me know that a new grandparent visitation bill was filed in the Florida Senate by a friend of his, a guy named Senator Danny Burgess. It builds upon the original bill. Basically, the Marquel Act, which was passed a few years ago, gives grandparents who were alienated certain visitation rights. Jo Potuto, the thing about this is the way I understand it, the immediate parent, in other words, it would have to be Wendy, who's convicted in order for this to kick in. So it's for people who are convicted and are actually the parent of the child, then the grandparents would have visitation rights. In this case, it's the ex-brother-in-law, the ex-mother-in-law is about to go on trial. But what about the fact that, the Markels had, along with Karen Cyphers, I think I can say this, she worked behind the scenes tirelessly, Jared Ross, to get this law passed in light of this. I mean, that is a little bit of a silver lining that comes out from tragedy after tragedy here, trial after trial.
Yeah, I'm absolutely in favor of grandparents' rights. But there's a constitutional issue sitting in all of that, which is why I am sure that the Florida law was so carefully crafted, and some people think it's so narrow, and that is the parental right to decide against the intrusion of the state as to how a child is going to be raised and who the child will interact with. So it's a really tough area. You get an easy case like one in which you think the mother has been complicit in the death of the father, and you want the relatives of the father to be able to see the child after that mother's been convicted. that's an easy case. But the range of cases that can come up where grandparents may want to have visitation against the interests and the predilections of the parents, it's a large range. So trying to figure out how to craft that to protect the right, the essential right of the parents, while opening the door to grandparents in cases where it seems to be warranted that the parents are making decisions for very bad reasons or motivated by malice towards the other parent and the grandparents. That's tough to do it in legislation. It's easier to do it in front of a judge on a fact-dependent case. But that's where it is. I'm sure that's why that Florida law was as narrowly crafted. But I agree that that law does give some entree, and at least it provides some opening in the really very clear, egregious cases in which grandparents are being excluded by a parent who's antagonistic to their interests, and there's been some sort of court finding that the parent was wrong.
By the way, I forgot to mention, in the merch store, there is now a COE shirt. Everyone's got their own COE. And my personal favorite, a Space Coast shirt. Space Coast on the West Coast, who handles all the audio needs, and it's a tie-dye because Spacey is a big Grateful Dead fan, otherwise known as a Deadhead. COE, is it possible to put this in our calendar? And by the way, January 24th is also, I believe, the day that Stefan Stearns is supposed to go on trial. Stefan Stearns is supposed to go on trial in the Matty Soto case just on the SA charges. And I'm going to be up there if indeed that happens. I have a feeling that maybe they'll combine trials, and we'll find out about that in the coming weeks. But if he is going on trial just on the SA charges, by the way, that would be a death penalty case. I am going to be up there for sure. You see the COE second channel will be up and running with 5 new hosts, new content, including the COE. Hope you're all subscribed. Turn your settings on. It's not like we don't have enough going on right now. We just decided we'll just, deluge us here. Don't give up, friends. George is going one at a time. Tim Jansen, to you. What are the challenges now if Donna's team wants to call Charlie? What are the issues there?
Well, Charlie has the right to take the fifth. Only the government can grant him immunity. The defense can't grant him immunity. So if defense calls him, the state can cross-examine him. If he says he's going to take the fifth, and the judge is not going to let him testify, because you can't invoke the fifth while giving testimony for one side. I don't know if Georgia will give him immunity, but they might, depending on the defense. And we all think we know what the defense is going to be. It's going to be that my son got over his head. These people threatened him. He came to me. I was only trying to protect him. I really don't know anything about all this kind of stuff. I'm just a retired teacher and a bookkeeper, and I was just protecting my son. He talked in codes because I was trying to protect him and my family. But it doesn't smell true when you talk about after they're arrested, she didn't go to the authorities and say, hey, these people threatened our lives. They can't get around that. How do they get around that? Once, and then you brought your daughter and your grandchildren in danger closer to these murderers before they were arrested, right? So that just doesn't, it's not common sense.
I do not know this, by the way, that Wendy will be arrested soon. I have no idea. Trust me, I'm not privy to that, but it's a question that everybody asks me. Look at this. One of the OGs, Ned Smith, who it took me about 2 years to figure out was not a guy named Ned, but actually a woman in Texas. It was her birthday. Happy birthday, belated birthday. Ned was a court reporter, by the way, unless she made that part of it up. But I think she was a court reporter, and she's quick with the wit. Couple more quick ones, and then I promise we're going to get final thoughts and wrap it up here. Brother, to you, how much of a concern for the current defense is it that Charlie was convicted? It's Tallahassee's not a small town, but it's not a huge town. People are there are probably going to know. Does it affect jury perception when they get to calling, voir diring a potential jury for Donna.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's going to be one of the first questions. Did you ever hear about this case? Did you hear about Charlie Adelson? Did you hear about Dan Markel? Did you hear anything about this case? Did you watch Surviving the Survivor or Brother Counsel? You know what Tim Jansen is, professor. So, I mean, these are going to be fleshed out during jury selection. And I'm sure that most of the people that watched Charlie Adelson's trial believe that he was full of it. And his story didn't make any sense. And it's ridiculous and it's fantastic. And if somebody knows about that trial, it will definitely affect them one way or the other, and you don't want that person on your jury. So the question is this going to be realistic in Tallahassee that people haven't heard about this case at all? I mean, Tim would have a better idea about that. And then if they did hear about it, how much did they hear about it, and are they going to be able to stay impartial? So I guess these are all things that we're going to have to see how jury selection goes. And unfortunately, we're not going to be in the courtroom, but maybe you will, Joel, with your tripod. And you'll be able to give us updates on the jury selection with that new tripod because of all these super stickers you got.
I'm going to take, I just figured it out, my kids' used popsicle sticks that they leave all over the house, and I will build my tripod from that. I will be, what's the word? Professor, what's the word I'm looking for? Not industrious. I'll be whatever. I'll innovate.
Is the word you want.
Foolish.
Yeah. Here's my buddy Wesley John Holmes, who I've never met, but I love the name. Joel, any idea why we haven't had any more jail calls lately from either Donna or Charlie? It's interesting you asked that, because I asked the same question of some people in the know, and people don't know. I believe that first round was leaked out by the SAO, the state attorney's office. And so we put some requests in. COE will put another one in, but we need to, I don't know. I think we're going to probably get some stuff as we get closer to trial, but it's interesting you asked that, because I literally asked the same exact question. Tim Jansen, a final sort of legal question here in terms of motive. It's always been Donna didn't want the grandchildren living in Tallahassee. She hated Tallahassee. She wanted them down in Miami. What's the defense going to do with that motive? Do they have to change the narrative completely and say, what are you talking about? She loved Tallahassee. She just, didn't, whatever. It was an 8-hour trip. So she only wanted them to come down every other week instead of every week because the drive is too long. What does the defense have to do with this motive that's out there?
Well, they have to be careful on the motive, because they would just then introduce and open the door to all those emails about the divorce proceedings. I don't think motive is going to be their great line of defense. They don't really need to do that. All they're doing is focusing on something they don't want to. They got to undermine the case. They don't have any direct evidence showing that Donna did anything, didn't participate with any of the killers or with Katie. And that's what they're going to have to do. And then they really got to focus on the flight to Vietnam. They're going to have to determine how they're going to explain that was not consciousness of guilt, because that's going to be the killer for them.
And then, Tim, this one is for you specifically. Then we'll get final thoughts. This is a great question. How's the defense going to explain that Donna never came to Charlie's trial if she was so scared for Charlie, wanted to see him safe and free and all these things? Good question. What's the answer, Tim?
Well, I think she's going to say we relied on Daniel. Daniel said he's going to win. They all thought they were going to win. Charlie was preparing to go home. Didn't think they needed Donna to come in because the evidence is so clear. They explained every piece of evidence that how could anybody find him guilty of murder? I don't know. I mean, she probably didn't come because they didn't want to put her on the stand and because there was conflict. So it's just laughable, to tell you the truth.
There he is, Martin Radner, otherwise known as Brother Counsel on YouTube. He's got one of the best YouTube channels out there, which is called Brother Counsel. He broke down the in-camera hearing. He's done a couple of shows on this very subject that we're talking about tonight. So please check out, please subscribe. He's also a criminal defense attorney, and he passed the bar on the first take, which is impressive in and of itself. Martin, just to make myself feel a little bit better, because I've got the fan on and I'm chilly, what would you say the temperature is in your hood right now, if you had to guess?
Real feel or actual temperature?
Let's do the real feel.
I mean, the real feel has got to be in the single digits. I mean, because it says that it's 22 now, and there's a wind outside of 11 miles per hour. So it really feels cold out there. You know, it's almost like you don't want to leave your office. You just want to stay here and work until you fall asleep. But no, I'm just joking.
Then you need Upperman's job. Now he's never coming on. Martin, have you ever asked yourself the following question? Why do I live here?
Yes, many times. I did ask that question. The truth of the matter,
6 little kids.
Yeah. I will tell you, Joel, that the real estate is a little bit more affordable here than it is in Florida, where you are. So that's one idea. I also have a lot of family here, and the Lions are about to win the Super Bowl. So I mean, it's a great time to be living in Detroit. So
you're absolutely right. And Detroit is making a comeback. It's a cool city, except in January and February. But so, brother, what are your final thoughts here on Donna, Charlie, Wendy? What does your brilliant mind tell us?
Yeah, my brilliant mind tells us that there's going to be a lot more to talk about in another week or so. It's the case that keeps giving. So I hope to be back on your show with Tim and the professor. And next week we'll have a weekly show, perhaps on the Adelson and Markel situation, and we'll be breaking everything down for everybody and having a good time. So and then we'll be talking, and as it leads up to the Lions win, I mean, what can be better? By the way, you should just know, I noticed that question that person said they're going to subscribe if I answer that question correctly.
Yeah.
Tara, I think her name was. She said that I answered the question correctly, so I got another subscriber. Thank you, Joel.
There you go.
So, it's always fun to be on here, and I always like coming on, so I appreciate that.
And look at this. Martin is the best. She is the professor, a legal scholar. You heard her. She's written a book about appellate advocacy. Is that the right? What's the actual title, Jo?
Winning appeals.
I like. How many books have you written, Jo?
3.
3 books.
Wow.
I would say my New Year's resolution would be to read all 3, but it's never going to happen.
No, don't make it. You wouldn't live up to it, and then you'd feel bad. So don't make it.
Look, the COE is looking on Amazon. It's not available.
No,
Winning
it's not
appeal.
It isn't.
We'll have to get Jo. You have to send me a signed copy. I want one. Jo, your final thoughts here. You're always really generous with your time, as are the other 2 guests. Obviously, a little bit of motion when it comes to Charlie's case over the last couple of days. What are you looking forward to in the future?
I'm going to make one comment, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. Mold and viruses and germs thrive in warm weather. So being in cold weather climates has its advantages. It's invigorating.
Yeah. On Instagram, I saw a guy saying he just moved to Florida and he wanted to share his cuddly new friend, and it was a giant cockroach walking around his very hairy leg. I sent it to the COE as a direct message. Yeah. That's one of the COE's biggest fears. I don't know if you ever saw it, but once again, I get off track.
Yeah, let me do final thoughts and get you back on.
Please,
How's that?
Please. Thank you.
It's interesting to me that in many ways, for the Adelsons, 2025 is beginning the way 2024 went and ended, which is there are new things that come up, some of which I haven't seen in other trials, or at least haven't seen routinely in other trials. I have a couple of hopes for this year. I hope the Donna Adelson trial goes and is finished, and there are no really significant appealable issues, and that one can be just checked off. What interests me some when I think about this case is it's hard to keep all the balls juggled in the air at the same time. I mean, there were, if you think back, when there was more talk about Wendy, when Donna's trial looked like it was going, there were tidbits of new evidence that it looked like were being developed against Wendy. Her friend at Florida State, who's now, I think, in California somewhere, who had written and said, I've got something I want to disclose. And there's so many little pieces like that keep getting lost in the wealth of intricacy and new things that keep developing in this case. So my hope would be that everything simplifies so that we can keep our eye and get one thing done and then move on to others.
Very well said, as you would expect from the professor. Last but certainly not least, he is the famed Tallahassee criminal defense attorney, the letter R and OUR, Timothy Jansen, former federal prosecutor. Tim, I'm not even going to ask you because I ask you every time, and you just laugh at me about Wendy being arrested. But I will ask you, what are you kind of anticipating next here?
Well, we're getting 32 degrees tonight with a little breeze, so it's chilly in Tallahassee. My daughter called me and said she's expecting snow next week in Atlanta.
Oh boy.
Those are the things you can expect. This case, you don't know what you're going to get. Every day it's different. Pretrial motions, I think, filed by the defense and the prosecution are going to give a great deal of anticipation where this trial's going, what the evidence is going to be. So this case is never going to end, and not for good reasons. But I think Judge Everett and the prosecution is going to do everything they can to make sure everything is clean and moves quicker than it has so far, because it's been really a slow process.
Well said. A quick reminder, tomorrow I'll be in federal court covering the Alexander brothers. You can Google that if you don't know the story, but it is not unlike what's going on with Diddy, except here in Miami, but they're going to be flown up because they're facing federal charges in New York, and they are not getting out of jail anytime soon or out of. They're going to be in the same detention center, as a matter of fact, as Sean Diddy Combs. Pierrette Hebert, minus 24 Celsius in Winnipeg, Canada. I would not leave the house, I can tell you that. But I think you win the prize for lowest temperature. So thank you for that. This is the COE and I met in Tucson, Arizona, 78 degrees there. I'm actually going to be in Tucson for a book festival. Sarah, better come see me. If you don't know, I've written a book, Surviving the Survivor, available anywhere books are sold. How to get that in there. Love you, America. By the way, we're going to do an Alexander brothers show tomorrow night as well with someone from MDC, a very savvy criminal defense attorney and a psychologist. So it'll be really interesting. I hope you tune in for that. Thanks to the best guests. Thanks to the mods. Thanks to COE. Thanks to Space Coast. Thanks to Meave Moen, who's up freezing his behind off in New York City. Look at this. A tripod fund. This is too kind. From Phyllis and Gavin. We have Gavin on all the time for Ellen Greenberg. And I've got something I want to try to do with Ellen Greenberg this year in Philadelphia. So I'll let you guys know that once I figure it out myself. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll let you know the showtime. Courts at 1:30. No cameras in federal court. So as soon as I get out, I will go live. Love you, America. Love you, Detroit, New Jersey, and Florida. Stay warm, everybody.